Yena gawa kimnyi we wanna bara nyaga jibrini. Pamana delgi burini na gungana yena. Dale gara baram gungana wana be. Gawa giligim pan mara delgi. Yena gawa kimnyi we wanna bara nyaga jibrini. Pamana delgi burini na gungana yena. Dale gara baram gungana wana be. I'm singing, come close to the fire now, to the smoke. This is our medicine, it's good for us, make us feel good and healthy and clean us, make us well. Dalgi nyaga nyini yiri pa martelki nyaka na nyura kili nyao ikima tangrata tari kuli nyura kili kima nyiti dalgi tangura karinata my country, my river, my place, good country. Tari wari. This is Tari country here, Magoya Lagoon, near Robinvale on the Murray River, and this place is Toltolil in Wari. Tari is Tol, meaning the lagoon. And also known as Magoya Lagoon, it's an ancestral creation site. It's a being, and it's the ancient Murray River watercourse. This is the original Murray River flow through here, and that's why you got the cliffs. So yeah, this is the ancestral creation site. It's a part of Bunyul and Milu, creation of the Murray River by the giant cod. You know, for us, this is a very spiritual place. It's a place of, when we talk about giving us, inspiring us to fight for country, fight for our water, Magoya is a place of inspiration for us and our elders and our children. So it's a very special place. And when it's full of water, it's just a beautiful place. Murray River people, our river country people, we rely on the water from the rivers, and that water from the river that flows out into the creeks and the lakes and the lagoons and the wetlands. So we rely on that water. And when there's no water there, that has a damaging effect on us, has a physical, it has a spiritual. It destroys our cultural economy, but it also destroys our country. And when you destroy our country, deprive our country of its water, its natural water, then that has a devastating effect on our culture. Because we're water people, and our culture is water-based. It's been managed and it's been diverted, manipulated, restricted, prevented from, moving naturally because of the lock and the weir and the regulators. And so it's like the veins in your body, if you go and block, a vein, if you prevent the blood from flowing to a part of your body, you're going to kill that body part. It's the same, and that's what they're basically doing, killing off the lungs and the organs of country by stopping water and holding it in the river for the purpose of the irrigators and the farmers to mass pump billions of litres of water out of the river to water their farms. Now, we do need farms and we do need food, but we need a balance too. We need to work in accordance with the natural environment and the availability of water.
The state of the river floodplain that we're standing on now is really a product of historic and contemporary regulation of these waterways, of the Murray Darling Basin in particular. That regulation and that management of water has been highly problematic for decades. Partly the reason we have a basin plan was in recognition of the over-extraction and the crisis facing these rivers and this floodplain. So unfortunately, while we've made some small steps forward, we've actually also got enormous progress yet to make, and we're really facing a major uphill battle in order to restore health to these floodplains.
Cultural flows, it comes from the Chuka Declaration, but it really comes from the spirit and heart of our nations and our country and our waterways. And for us, cultural flows is water, cultural water, spiritual water. It's water for our people, it's water for our country, but it's also water for water. Because the water needs its cultural flow itself. That water needs to flow across country.
Cultural flows is a concept that traditional owners have been developing for a number of years, especially in the southern Murray Darling Basin, as essentially a tool to identify means of establishing far greater Aboriginal control and authority over water management, especially along the Murray River floodplain here, such as sites like this at Marguya Lagoon. This particular project we're working on with Tatty Tatty is an endeavour to apply that concept to a particular place, to a particular country that is here at Marguya Lagoon. Out of that, what we're hoping is that we can then take this kind of case study and this kind of example as a model of how to progress the idea of cultural flows in practice elsewhere on other country, and other traditional owners might take up that opportunity too.
So, our culture is dictated and informed by and inspired by our waters. You take that water away, you're taking away our culture, taking away our future, and you're taking away our children's abilities and opportunity to learn about themselves and about their culture and about their country. Yeah, my daughter Mel, my oldest daughter, I'm very proud of her. She's very special, very strong, and she's already has a strong connection to this place. She's leading the way to get Marguya healthy again and make this wetland and this lagoon well again. And she knows that for our own spirit and our own health and well-being, it's important for her to continue to work and fight to get Marguya recognised, and for Tatty Tatty to get recognised.
So Marguya Lagoon here is very representative of the Murray River floodplain more generally. There's wetlands along it, billabongs. This country would, prior to regulation of the river, have flooded annually, or at least biannually. So while at this time of the year, in autumn, it would be relatively dry, it wouldn't look like this. It would be, it would dry out and then it would be flooded and it would become an abundant wetland every year. So if we're going to do cultural flows at a site at Marguya Lagoon, a site like this, really what we need to do is bring water over the floodplain into the lagoon here behind me in a manner that mimics how naturally the floodplain floods.
When the water fills that part of the lagoon up, it gets too full and then it overflows. And that's where the fish, ancestors catch all the fish here. But there's cooking ovens in the ground everywhere here. That's what this whole area is. It's a cooking site, camping site, ancestors. And we come here today and we come here and camp here, and when there's water here, we come here and we come here and observe, and we come here and look at country and learn from country, and we can feel our ancestors' presence here. Now, we've been here for 2,000 generations. Been here for over 100,000 years, since the beginning creation time of this waterway. The foreigners have only been here for not even 230 years. 230 years cannot erase our sovereignty for this country. It's ours, it's our inheritance, it's our belonging, it's what we belong to, and it belongs to us. It's for us to care and maintain and pass on to our children and our future generations.
So government has funded the whole Cultural Flows research project, which has been a really important investment in ideas and thinking. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we need government to go a step further and to provide the resources and the assistance to actually build cultural flows outcomes here on country. And that means access to water. It means traditional owner access and authority over land and over the landscape. And ultimately, the objective of that entire exercise is to restore the health of country. And that's not only about restoring the health of country, but restoring justice to Aboriginal people too. If we can develop a cultural flows program and model that applies to a site like this, like Marguya Lagoon, then there's an enormous opportunity for governments to step up and achieve real gains for Aboriginal people and their control and authority over water and on country. And one of the major important things of that is to reverse the aquanullius that Aboriginal communities are facing, that is basically being shut out of the control and having any meaningful authority over water management, especially in the Murray Darling Basin.
We need water that is our water. It's owned by our people, it's delivered by our people, it's managed. Now we have to prepare that water, prepare country for water, and we have to prepare water for country so that, you know, that water is healthy, it's been purified, has all that it needs in that water to be able to look after country, and then country will respond to that water. They need to recognise and afford proper respect to our people, and they need to relinquish those water back to country, back to us. Let water be on country so as everything can be well again.
All right. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us today and watching that really powerful video created by Environmental Justice Australia. So just like to credit them. My name's Melissa Kennedy, and I'm here today with my dad, Brendan Kennedy, and we are Tatty Tatty members from Robinvale and from Murray River people. And we're just going to be talking today on what you've just seen in that video on cultural flows for Tatty Tatty country at Margoya Lagoon, and just the state of the Murray River in our area and the things that First Nations are really having to contend with in the water space. I might hand it over to my dad, Brendan, just to introduce himself and have a bit of a yarn about what we're doing in this space.
Oh, hello everyone. Brendan Kennedy, Tatty Tatty Gudgeon, water officer, along with my daughter Mel. Yeah, we've been working on cultural flows for our country, but more specifically Margoya Lagoon. So yeah, we've been developing our cultural flows program that we've been developing in conjunction with Mildrum, Murray Lower Darling Rivers Indigenous Nations, and as part of the national cultural flows sort of program that's been developed. And also we've managed to secure some support and partner with organisations along the way, such as Environmental Justice Australia, and more recently with Melbourne University as well. So yeah, we're going to talk about cultural flows for Tatty Tatty people from Margoya Lagoon. And so yeah, look, Barinya Gudgeon Currywater. It's a healthy water flowing. That to us, that's cultural flows for us. Barinya Gudgeon Currywater for Margoya.
So we're the Aboriginal water officers for Tatty Tatty. There's 17 Aboriginal water officers across Victoria, and we're working to restore the Murray River. We hold workshops and gatherings with First Nations, with our mob, with Tatty Tatty, to really try and progress those priorities and values of First Nations in a space where traditional values and experiences of water aren't really understood within environmental organisations.
Yeah, so there's Tari Tari, Milu Tangi Kulingi, river country people. And yeah, so Tari Tari country is where Murray River peoples, Murray River First people, around Robinvale on the Victorian border, and Euston on the South Wales borders, sort of in that mid Murray area, northwest Victoria, southwest New South Wales. So yeah, we're river people, and we know that healthy water means healthy country and healthy people, and we've got elders that they remember when there was healthy water, when there was clear, clean water in the river. Unfortunately, in my lifetime and my children, grandsons' lifetime, we haven't seen clear, healthy water. So, but we have our elders. They know what healthy water is and what it looks like. Yeah, look, we're Tari Tari Kajan, we're traditional owner, Tari Tari, non-for-profit organisation. Our aims are to progress, our Tari Tari water rights, our rights to water, and continuing to restore and maintain and strengthen, our connection, and our health of our people and our country, and replenishing and our culture and our spirits through water. Water plays a big part, major part in leading and maintaining our cultural spirit. So yeah, there's been a lot of research done, over the years around, water holdings. In more recent times, here's a report that was done by Dr. Alana Hartwig and Dr. Sue Jackson around water holdings in the Murray Darling Basin. And yeah, first it says, the report, the findings are that First Nations hold water entitlements, 0.1% of water entitlements within the whole Murray Darling Basin. Very, very tiny percentage of water. And yeah, it's only to the value of about $18 million, out of the whole water entitlements in the basins. The whole water entitlement is about $16.5 billion. So that's based on, a part of the information, mostly New South Wales, Queensland, South Australia, but not so much Victoria. We don't have those figures for Victoria. So yeah, Milu means him or her, him, the river as a person to us, Milu, the Murray River. And it's the longest river in Australia, and it's central to many creation stories for a lot of Murray River nations, and also the nations that are away from the Murray, coming off the Murray into other rivers, the Murrumbidgee, even the Darling River. But this water from the Murray, it supplies countless wetlands and waterholes right throughout, Murray River country. And for us, for Tari Tari country, the water it's integral to our wetlands and our waterholes and our spiritual connection to country. Problem is, we have a weir system at the moment that's over extracting. We have a management system that's been imposed upon our country, and that's impacting our people and our culture every day. Magoya Lagoon, it's situated in a place called Toltol. And yeah, it's a wetland. For us as part of our river system, it's an organ. It's a filter system. It's an ancestral being, Tari Tari country, and it's naturally fed by the river, Milu, the Murray, and it's a place where our people, we connect to country and each other and ourselves and our ancestors. We have significant cultural trees there and ancestral sites, and our people, we've been We've been around Magoya and along the Milu in our country, Tati country, for over 2,000 generations. It's a long time. So yeah, Magoya, it supports our country and our ecosystem and all living life on country there, and also supports our people's cultural economies. So the health of Magoya, it has that direct link impact on the health of our people emotionally and spiritually, physically, and culturally. Yeah, one of the threats to Magoya is there's many threats at the moment. Has been and is ongoing. But yeah, the regulator that's been built there in 2009. That's that's been an ongoing threat for Magoya and for our people, and it really restricts and stops the natural flow. So yeah, to us it's mismanagement. It's mismanaging our Magoya, and it's also mismanaging the river, and it has that human impact on us and our cultural landscape. So yeah, for cultural flows, it come from the Echuca Declaration, Mildren, 2007, and what it is it's cultural entitlements that are legally and beneficially owned by Indigenous nations of a sufficient and adequate quantity and quality to improve the spiritual, cultural and environmental, social and economic conditions of those nations, of all of our First Nations. So cultural flows for Magoya Lagoon, for Tati, it can be different for a cultural flow for another nation and their cultural watering sites. So but this is the this is the statement that's applied for cultural flows in general, and it's a very powerful statement. It's something that we really look to and we really look to apply this cultural flow statement.
So these quotes here, these have been taken from the National Cultural Flows project, which you can find online, and it really just sort of captures those ideas of water and what cultural flows means to First Nations, and just really talking about how water is central to the cultural, social and spiritual identity of First Nations people, as Dad's been speaking about. And what's written into the whole cultural flows concept is that First Nations are responsible and involved throughout the entire process. It's not just about being involved at the very end. It's about being involved from site selection all the way through to the water management as well as the monitoring as well. So it's really using those traditional practices of caring for country and ensuring that the cultural and traditional ecological knowledge isn't lost along the way. We really, believe and put forward that water has that right to be recognised as an ecological entity, as a being and a person with its own spirit, that really needs to be treated accordingly. So yeah, the cultural flows really does capture both the way that we need water to be delivered, but also the meaning behind water on country as well for First Nations. This is just a little background to the conception of cultural flows. As Dad mentioned, it really did begin at the Echuca Declaration with Mildren, which Mildren is the Murray Lower Darling Rivers Indigenous Nations. And so it really was a groundbreaking statement that just really captured those ideas that, for the First Nations in the basin had really understood for generations, but to get it down on paper, it was really groundbreaking. And so that was in 2007. And by 2010, the Northern Basin Aboriginal nations also accepted cultural flows, the declaration as well. That led to government funding for a National Cultural Flows Research Project. And that lasted 7 years, where there are a whole number of different steps and stages of that research project, with a lot of engagement along the way, and really involving the First Nations values and comments. And out of that, in 2017, this Cultural Flows Guide was created. And that really sets out the steps for, you know, finding out the values of water on country for each nation, because it is going to be different across different sites. And those steps that need to be achieved to set out, you know, what sort of a cultural flow looks like for that area. And so this is what came out of that Cultural Flows Guide. You know, the three-stage methodology is what has been sort of recommended, that cultural flows management plans can be created by. And as you can see, it just starts off with that sort of understanding and describing and getting down the values and objectives of the nation. And so this is just a way for nations to start from the beginning and really get an understanding of what it's going to look like. And then moving on to that stage 2, which is to develop a cultural flows management plan. And we'll have a bit of a chat later about how we did that for Magoya Lagoon. And it really just helps to summarise the cultural character and the relationships between the environment and the people and water, and really to determine what those water requirements are. And then that third step is implementing and monitoring. So, and this is actually the step that Tati Tati are at right now. We've already created our monitoring and evaluation plan and our cultural flows management plan. So we're just in that stage of basically getting water and, you know, fulfilling our cultural flows requirements and monitoring and evaluating what those outcomes are. So for Tati Tati and for Magoya Lagoon, you know, this idea of cultural flows, it's really a way for us to restore those natural paths of water. Right now, the lagoon just isn't being inundated the right way. With the regulator in place, it's just disrupting the entire flow of the system. And you know, cultural flows are really a way to put forward our values of how water should be getting to this floodplain area. It also prioritises our values and objectives and aspirations, and ensures that these harmful techniques don't need to be used. We don't need diesel pumps. You know, we want to get to the point where we don't need the regulator, and we have this technique, and you know, our knowledges are really used to be able to bring water back into the system the proper way. It helps to restore our cultural use and occupancy, you know, and this is one thing that has been disrupted because of river regulation. You know, when there's no water in an area, we don't necessarily visit there as much. When there's lots of water, we can restore those practices of camping and fishing and ceremony. So, you know, cultural flows is a way to really bring that connection back to country of our cultural use and occupancy. So this is the Cultural Flows Management Plan that we released just a few weeks ago now. We've been working on this over the past 12 to 18 months with Tati Tati, and we've been supported by Mildren as well as DALP, and you know, this is funded by the Australian government as well. And we went through those steps for the Cultural Flows methodology and have been successful in really putting out a strong document that captures all of our values and aspirations and goals. You can see just on the middle page there our values. So we've got that graphic that we really captured the values of our nation. And you can see that central to that is water. Water is really the thing that centers us all, and it's healthy people, healthy animals, healthy plants all rely on that central concept of water. And then surrounding that are the added values of ceremony and cultural heritage, fishing, you know, spiritual well-being. So those are all really documented in this cultural flows management plan, because for us, it's not just about the water and the ecological benefit and the measurements, and it's about the feelings and the history and the spirit of water as well, and that it's all connected. So part of our management plan as well, and part of our journey, was what we've deemed as the test flow. So in 2020, we did take part in an environmental water allocation that was delivered at a creek just near Magoya Lagoon. This was facilitated by the Mallee Catchment Management Authority. They basically applied for the water on our behalf, which in itself sort of determines that it's not a cultural flow, since we weren't involved, from the onset of the project. However, we were able to participate in the delivery of the water and the monitoring that occurred afterwards. So we created our own monitoring plan, and we had tatty people on country monitoring for across about 5 weeks, I think it was. And this really captured some important data for us and some knowledge about, how water should be delivered, and more importantly, how water shouldn't be delivered, really. And the key findings that we got from this, water event was the overall cultural well-being of people tended to drop when we saw the water that was unhealthy and that was being delivered the wrong way. And what occurred was a black water event because there wasn't enough water, there wasn't enough prep work done. We didn't have a cultural burn, so there was too much leaf litter. So that sense of water not being on country the right way has a really, really significant effect on First Nations people, and that was really reflected in these results.
Yeah, it wasn't enough water. It was only just enough water to fill that water hole. And although our people's spirits were lifted as water was moving, and we helped that water move cross country into that water hole, and once the pumps were turned off, the next day the water went black, and that really dampened our people's spirits and our well-being.
And so we've also listed there as well our recommendations and next steps, just about engagement with organisations such as the Mallee CMA, and that there really is that genuine and meaningful relationship building going on, so that we can ensure events like this aren't happening in the future. We really want to assert that our rights and responsibilities to care for country and waterway is crucial from the onset of all decisions that are being made on country. And unfortunately, in this instance, it's a clear example of where that didn't occur. So following on from our cultural flows management plan, we actually have been partnering as well with Environmental Justice Australia, who created that fantastic video at the start of our presentation. And they've also created this legal and policy report for Magoya Lagoon around establishing a cultural flows, and just what the legal and policy sort of pathways or barriers might be in achieving cultural flows. And it's a really, really strong document that just sort of does get into the nitty-gritty of what the relevant sort of issues are around the legal space of water, as well as the differing stakeholders that are involved, and what relationships need to be built there. So moving forward, we've set out these 4 objectives about what we need and what, as a nation, we want to achieve. And this is about tatty being empowered as water managers of Magoya Lagoon, as well as the Tol landscape and tatty country as well. And just seeing our values, outcomes and aspirations prioritised and incorporated into those management practices. We need to see traditional ecological knowledge valued. We know the value in our traditional practices, and our ancestors have been caring for country and waterways for thousands of generations. We really need governments and water managers to come to the table and understand that there's that real crucial importance that traditional owners need to be involved. We also expect cultural flows to be tangibly incorporated into the basin plan, with those First Nations outcomes and priorities of water are included in a legitimate way. As mentioned in our recommendations, that genuine and meaningful collaboration and agreement making is achieved between water managers, as well as other relevant public authorities and traditional owners, and that it is sustained during all aspects of water management. So like we said, not just at the very end where we come on and just monitor as the water is on country. We need to be involved in every aspect of decisions made about water on country. And then we also require that immediate legal and policy change to allow for water entitlements that are legally and beneficially owned by First Nations, which is set out in the Cultural Flows methodology. And that Cultural Flows Echuca Declaration can be found on the Mildren website as well as the Cultural Flows methodology, which is on the Cultural Flows Research website.
Yeah, I think it's important that First Nations are empowered, and that there has to be water allocations made available for all First Nations to own the water and to deliver the water wherever we need it to be delivered, and that we are the First Nations peoples are the water managers, the delivery arm, and implementing delivery of water on country, having control of making all the decisions around, when, where and how water is delivered on their countries, and it needs to be fully supported and resourced by governments.
So that wraps up our presentation slides. We might just switch off now and change over to some Q&As and continue the discussion on cultural flows and Magoya Lagoon.